The mountain man asked, "Can I buy you?" to a homeless girl. She laughed, and he never recovered. Elias Boone lived high in the mountains, far away from the noise of towns and people. His cabin stood alone on a rocky ridge, surrounded by tall pine trees and cold winds that never seemed to rest. Most men could not survive there for long, but Elias had made it his home for many years. People in the nearby town rarely saw him. When they did, it was always the same. He would ride down on his strong brown horse, wearing a long coat and a wide hat that hid his face. He spoke very little, bought what he needed, and left before anyone could ask questions. To the townsfolk, Elias was a mystery. Some said he was once a hunter. Others believed he had a past he was trying to forget. But no one really knew the truth. Elias did not care. He believed life was simple. Work hard, trust no one, and expect nothing from others. That was how he survived. That was how he stayed strong. But even a man like Elias could not escape one thing: loneliness. He did not speak about it. He did not even think about it often. But sometimes, on cold nights when the fire burned low, the silence in his cabin felt heavier than the mountains around him. One late afternoon, as winter slowly approached, Elias rode down to the town earlier than usual. His supplies were running low, but something else also pushed him to come down. The air felt different that day. The sky was gray, and the wind carried a strange stillness, like something was about to change. He tied his horse outside the general store and stepped onto the wooden porch. That was when he saw her. She sat in the corner, close to the wall, as if trying to disappear. Her clothes were old and worn out, not enough to keep her warm in the coming cold. Her boots did not match, and her coat looked too thin for the mountain air. But her eyes, they were sharp, awake, watching everything. Most people walked past her without stopping. Some glanced for a moment, then quickly looked away. In that town, people were used to ignoring what made them uncomfortable. Elias was not like most people. He stopped. For a few seconds, he simply looked at her, not with kindness, not with cruelty, but with the same careful attention he gave to everything in his life. The girl noticed him, but did not react right away. She stayed still, her eyes fixed somewhere far ahead. Elias took a step closer. "You got a name?" he asked in a calm, low voice. The girl slowly turned her head and looked at him. There was no fear in her face, no weakness. "Depends," she said. "Why do you want it?" Elias was not used to such answers. Most people either respected him or avoided him. This girl did neither. He studied her for a moment. "You alone?" he asked. She gave a small shrug. "Ain't everyone?" Her answer stayed in the air for a moment. Elias did not smile. He did not frown. But something about her words caught his attention. He looked at her again, at her thin coat, her tired face, her strong eyes. In his mind, he began to think in the only way he knew. Problem, solution. Simple. He had food in his cabin, warm shelter, work that needed to be done. To him, it made sense. So he said it. "Can I buy you?" The words came out plain and direct, just like everything Elias said. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The wind outside slowed. The sounds from inside the store faded. The girl blinked once, then twice, and then she laughed. Not a small laugh, not a shy one, a real, full laugh. It surprised everyone nearby. A few people inside the store turned their heads. Even Elias felt something strange inside him. He had expected many things: silence, anger, fear, but not this. The girl looked at him, still smiling, shaking her head slightly. "You serious?" she said between laughs. "That's what you say to someone?" Elias stood still. For the first time in a long while, he did not know what to say. "I meant," he started, but the words felt wrong now. The girl stood up slowly. She was not very tall, but she carried herself with confidence. "You don't even know me," she said, "and you think you can just buy me like I'm something on a shelf?" Elias frowned slightly. That was not how he saw it, but now, hearing it like that, it sounded different. "I was offering help," he said. The girl crossed her arms. "Maybe, but that's not how you ask." There was a short silence between them. Elias looked at her again, but this time, something had changed. For the first time in years, he felt unsure. The girl picked up her small bag from the ground. "Name's Lila," she said, "but not for sale." She gave him one last look, then turned and walked away down the dusty road. Elias stayed where he was, watching, thinking, and slowly, something inside him began to shift, in a way he did not understand yet. Elias Boone did not leave town that day. That was strange. Usually he would finish his work quickly, buy supplies, check his horse, and return to the mountains before sunset. But this time he stayed. Even he did not fully understand why. He told himself it was because winter was coming early. He needed extra food, stronger rope, and tools for the cold season. But deep inside, he knew the truth. He was thinking about Lila. Her laughter kept echoing in his mind. Not angry, not rude, just honest. No one had ever laughed at him like that before. That night, Elias rented a small room above the general store. The bed was simple, and the walls were thin. He was not used to sleeping in places like this anymore. The sounds of the town kept him awake, footsteps, voices, doors opening and closing. And in between those sounds, silence. The kind of silence that made him think. The next morning, Elias woke up early. He stepped outside and looked around the town. People were already moving, starting their day. Shop owners opened doors, children ran across the street, and workers prepared for long hours. Everything looked normal, but his eyes searched for someone. Lila. He walked through the streets slowly, trying not to make it obvious. He checked the porch of the general store. Empty. He walked past the stable. Nothing. He went near the river where some travelers rested. Still nothing. By noon, Elias began to feel something new. Restless. He did not like it. Elias was a man who liked control. He liked knowing where things were, how things worked, what would happen next. But this felt different. As the sun moved higher in the sky, Elias stopped near the blacksmith's shop. The sound of hammer hitting metal echoed through the air. And then he heard it. Laughter. Not loud, not wild, but familiar. He turned his head. Behind the blacksmith's shed, he saw her. Lila. She was sitting on an old wooden crate talking to a young boy. The boy looked no older than 12. They were sharing a piece of bread, laughing about something simple. Elias stood still for a moment, watching. She looked different in the daylight, still wearing the same old clothes, still rough around the edges, but there was life in her, energy. She noticed him. Of course she did. Her eyes met his, and her smile faded into something more careful. "You following me now?" she called out. The boy looked between them, confused, then quietly stepped away. Elias walked closer, but slowly this time. "No," he said. "I was looking for you." Lila raised an eyebrow. "That better be a good reason." Elias stopped a few steps away. He removed his hat for a moment, then put it back on. A small, nervous habit he didn't even realize he had. "I didn't say it right," he said. Lila tilted her head. "Say what right?" "What I said yesterday." She crossed her arms again. "Yeah, you didn't." There was no anger in her voice now, just honesty. Elias took a breath. This was harder than climbing mountains. "I don't want to buy you," he said. "I was trying to offer help, but I said it wrong." Lila studied him carefully. She was quiet for a few seconds. "You always talk like that?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like everything is a deal, like people are things." Elias didn't answer right away. "Maybe," he admitted. Lila nodded slowly. "That's the problem." There was a short silence. The wind moved between them, carrying dust across the ground. Elias looked at her again, but this time there was no measuring in his eyes, no judging, just listening. "I have work," he said finally, "at my cabin. Real work. Chopping wood, fixing fences, cooking, cleaning. I can pay you. Fair." Lila didn't respond immediately. She looked away, thinking. "And if I say no?" she asked. Elias shrugged slightly. "Then you say no. No pressure. No force." That was new. Lila looked back at him, surprised by his answer. "You're different today," she said. Elias gave a small nod. "Trying to be." She let out a quiet breath, then sat back down on the crate. "Most people in this town," she said slowly, "they don't ask. They either ignore you or they tell you what to do." Elias stayed silent. "You didn't ask right yesterday," she added, "but at least you're trying now." That meant something, more than Elias expected. "So," he asked, "what do you say?" Lila looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were sharp again, searching for any sign of a lie. "What's the catch?" she asked. "No catch," Elias said. "You work, I pay. You stay if you want. You leave if you want. Simple, clear, fair." Lila tapped her fingers lightly against her knee. "You live up in those mountains, right?" she asked. "Yes." "Cold up there?" "Yes." "Lonely too?" Elias did not answer that one. Lila noticed. A small smile appeared on her face. "I'll think about it," she said. Elias nodded once. That was enough. As he turned to leave, Lila called out behind him, "Hey, mountain man!" He stopped and looked back. "If I come," she said, "you don't get to treat me like something you own." Elias shook his head. "I won't." Lila held his gaze for a moment longer, then gave a small nod. "Good," she said. Elias walked away, but this time something inside him felt lighter. For the first time in years, he was not just surviving. He was waiting. 3 days passed. Elias Boone had already returned to his mountain cabin. The air was colder now, and the first light snow had started to fall across the ridge. Everything looked the same as before. The tall trees, the quiet wind, the small wooden cabin standing alone. But something felt different. Elias found himself looking down the narrow trail more often than usual. Every sound made him pause. Every movement in the distance caught his attention. He told himself it didn't matter if she came or not, but deep down, it did. On the third morning, just as the sun began to rise behind the mountains, Elias heard something. Footsteps. Not heavy like a man's, not fast like an animal. Careful. Slow. He stepped outside the cabin and looked toward the trail. And there she was, Lila. She stood a few steps away, carrying a small bag over her shoulder. Her coat was the same, her boots still mismatched, but her eyes were steady. "You took your time," Elias said. Lila shrugged. "Had to make sure I wasn't making a bad decision." Elias nodded. "Fair." She looked past him at the cabin. It was simple. Rough wood, small windows, smoke rising from the chimney. "This is it?" she asked. "This is it." Lila stepped forward slowly, looking around. The mountains stretched endlessly behind the cabin, silent and powerful. "It's quiet," she said. "Yes." "Too quiet." Elias almost smiled. "You get used to it." Lila walked inside without asking. Elias followed. The cabin was clean but basic. A table, 2 chairs, a bed, a small fire burning in the corner. Tools hung neatly on the wall. Everything had its place. Lila set her bag down and looked around carefully. "You really live like this?" she asked. "Yes." "Alone?" Elias paused for a moment. "Yes." Lila nodded slowly, then turned back to him. "All right," she said. "Let's talk." Elias leaned against the wall, waiting. "You said work," she continued. "What kind of work exactly?" Elias pointed outside. "Wood needs cutting. Fence on the east side is broken. Water needs to be carried from the stream. Food needs to be cooked." Lila listened carefully. "And payment?" she asked. "Food, warm place, and money when we go to town," Elias said. "Fair amount." Lila crossed her arms. "And rules?" Elias thought for a moment. "Respect," he said. "That's all." Lila looked at him closely, as if testing his words. "No orders?" she asked. "No." "No shouting?" "No." "No treating me like I belong to you?" Elias shook his head. "No." There was a long silence. Then Lila nodded. "All right," she said. "I'll try." That was the beginning. The first few days were not easy. Lila was not used to this kind of life. The cold was stronger up here. The work was harder. Carrying water from the stream made her arms ache. Chopping wood left her hands sore. But she didn't complain. Not much. Elias watched her quietly. He didn't interfere unless she asked for help. He showed her how to hold the axe properly, how to stack wood so it stayed dry, how to move carefully on icy ground. Lila learned fast, faster than he expected. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, they sat outside near the fire. Lila stretched her arms and let out a tired breath. "This place is harder than it looks," she said. Elias nodded. "It's not meant to be easy." Lila glanced at him. "Why do you live here?" Elias didn't answer right away. "I just do," he said finally. "That's not an answer. It's enough." Lila rolled her eyes slightly. "You really don't like talking, do you?" Elias looked at the fire. "Not much." Lila picked up a small stick and moved the firewood around. "Well," she said, "you're going to have to learn." Elias looked at her, confused. "Why?" "Because I talk," she said simply. For a moment, Elias didn't respond. Then, unexpectedly, a small smile appeared on his face. Days turned into a week, then 2. Slowly, the silence between them began to change. It was no longer heavy. It became comfortable. Lila started asking more questions about the mountains, about survival, about his past. Elias didn't answer everything, but he answered more than he used to. One afternoon, while fixing the broken fence, Lila spoke again. "You ever think about that day in town?" she asked. Elias kept working. "Yes." "Good," she said. Elias stopped for a moment and looked at her. "You really laughed hard," he said. Lila grinned. "You deserved it." Elias nodded slightly. "Maybe I did." Lila leaned against the fence post. "You know," she said, "most people would have gotten angry." "I'm not most people," Elias replied. "No," she said, "you're not." There was something different in her voice this time. Respect. As the wind moved through the trees, Elias returned to his work. But inside, something had changed again. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the mountains were the only thing keeping him standing. Someone else was there too, and he didn't mind it. Not at all. And now? Elias paused. Now was different. "Now I notice things more," he said. Lila smiled slightly. "Like what?" Elias looked at her for a moment. "Like not being alone." Lila didn't laugh this time. She just nodded. That night, the storm lasted for hours, but inside the cabin, the fire stayed strong, and the silence felt calm, not empty. The next morning, the world outside was covered in fresh snow. Everything looked new, clean and untouched. Lila stepped outside first, her boots sinking into the soft snow. "Wow," she said softly. "It's beautiful." Elias stood behind her. "Yes," he said, "it is." They spent the day clearing snow from around the cabin. The work was slow, but they worked together, side by side. At one point, Lila slipped slightly on the ice. Elias reached out quickly and steadied her. For a second, they both paused. Then Lila smiled. "Careful, mountain man." Elias let go slowly. "You too." There was something different in that moment, something quiet, but strong. As the days passed, winter grew deeper, but so did their understanding of each other. They didn't need many words anymore. They understood. One evening, as they sat by the fire again, Lila looked at Elias. "You ever think about going back to town?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "Not much." "You don't miss people?" Elias thought for a moment. "I didn't," he said. Lila raised an eyebrow. "And now?" Elias looked at her. "Now I don't feel like I have to." Lila smiled, but there was something thoughtful in her eyes. "You know," she said, "that first day, when you asked if you could buy me—" Elias sighed softly. "I remember." "Good," she said, "because that was the worst thing I've ever heard." Elias nodded. "I know." There was a small pause. Then Lila added, "But if you hadn't said it, maybe we wouldn't be here." Elias looked at the fire. Maybe she was right. Sometimes even wrong words could lead to something right, if a person was willing to change. "I'm not that man anymore," Elias said quietly. Lila looked at him and nodded. "No," she said, "you're not." The fire cracked softly between them. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, two lives that had once been separate now moved forward together. Not as a deal, not as a trade, but as something real. Elias Boone, the man who once believed everything had a price, had finally learned something new. Some things were not meant to be bought. They were meant to be built. And for the first time in his life, Elias was not just surviving in the mountains. He was living.